My father refused to walk me down the aisle, choosing a trip to Hawaii with his favorite daughter instead. But a day before the wedding, he changed his mind because of what I did. So, I'm 26, and my wedding is happening this week. Just 5 days left before the ceremony, and I'm already drowning in drama thanks to my sister and my dad. For context, my dad has been our only parent for the last 10 years since my mom passed away from cancer when I was 16. It was an incredibly difficult time for all of us, but especially for me, because I realized I no longer had my mom's support. That meant my sister could push me around however she wanted. Mom always treated us equally, but my dad definitely had a soft spot for my sister. After Mom died, she got away with literally everything. No matter what she did, my dad never called her out on it. My sister, Emily, is 2 years older than me, and she is by far the most annoying, spoiled person I have ever met. As kids, she basically treated me like her personal servant, and whenever I protested, Dad would ask me to just do what she wanted. Apparently, she was too fragile to do things herself. It was all an act, I knew it, but Dad believed her. Emily had some health issues when she was little, and she milked that for all it was worth. Even when she got older and stopped being sick all the time, she still played the chronically ill card to dodge any responsibilities around the house. In the end, I was the one doing all the chores while she lay in bed, doing absolutely nothing. It pissed me off, but if I didn't do it, nobody would. Dad came home exhausted from work, and I didn't want to bother him with it. When I turned 18 and left for college, my life finally started to improve. I didn't have to live under the same roof as her anymore. After college, we barely talked. Not only because I didn't like her, but because we never actually got along. She wasn't just lazy, she was straight up unbearable. Always making snide remarks, always trying to get under my skin, always being a pain in the ass. So, yeah, I was beyond relieved to be away from her. Sure, I missed my dad, but I wasn't going to sacrifice my sanity just to live near family. And yeah, I know it might seem weird that I still had a decent relationship with my dad despite his blatant favoritism toward Emily. But that's just how it was. That doesn't mean I let him walk all over me. I always stood my ground when he crossed the line. We had plenty of fights over the years about how he treated Emily, but at the end of the day, he was still my dad, and we always found a way to make up. I met my fiancé, Jake, in college, and after almost 8 years together, we finally decided to get married this year. Our careers are stable, everything's going well, so it just felt like the right time. I can't say the same for Emily. Lately, her life has been an absolute mess, and she's moved back in with Dad. She lived on her own for a couple of years after college, but last year, she quit her job to start a jewelry business with a friend. Spoiler alert, it crashed and burned. They didn't do any research, didn't plan things properly, just dived in head first without thinking it through. Of course, with that kind of approach, failure was inevitable. They blew through all their money, most of which they borrowed from family and friends, and barely made a dime. Emily ended up unemployed, and after the business went under, they had to shut it down. That was 6 months ago. She hasn't even tried looking for another job since. She's been leeching off my dad, and honestly, it's infuriating. He was supposed to retire in a couple of years, but now, that's probably not happening because he has to support her. We had a huge argument about it recently. I told him he needs to push Emily to get a job. She can't just sit around forever, mooching off an aging parent. One failed business doesn't mean she gets to wallow in self-pity for the rest of her life. She needs to get her act together. But Dad insists she just needs time to emotionally recover before she can take on something new. We're on completely opposite sides of this argument, so we just avoid talking about it to prevent another fight. To make things worse, I got engaged just a couple of weeks after Emily's business collapsed. Dad thinks that's another reason she's so upset, because even her younger sister is thriving, while she can't even get out of bed most days. I know for a fact she's jealous. She makes it painfully obvious on social media. Every post is a sob story, acting like the whole world is against her. And anytime someone offers sympathy, she finds a way to mention how unfair it is that my life is going so well while hers is falling apart. According to her, I only got where I am because I'm manipulative and willing to step on people to get ahead, which is absolute bullshit. I worked my ass off to get here, while she's been playing the victim her whole life. That being said, there's one thing that genuinely sucked for her 3 weeks ago. Her cat passed away. The cat was nearly 15 years old, and Emily was really attached to her. It completely wrecked her, and Dad told me she was taking it especially hard. I won't lie, it actually made me feel bad for her. For the first time in years, I wanted to offer some kind of support, but I didn't want to come off as fake, so I just asked Dad to pass along my condolences. Emily was already in a pretty deep depressive state, and when her cat died, things got even worse. She refused to eat for days, and Dad practically had to beg her to get out of bed and keep living. I actually felt bad for her, but with my wedding only a couple of weeks away, I had way too much on my plate to get involved. I kept in touch with Dad, comforting him when he got especially frustrated with Emily, but that was all I could manage. I never thought any of this would affect me personally until a few days ago, when my dad called and told me he wouldn't be walking me down the aisle at my wedding. I had just assumed he would be the one to do it. The night before he called, I even officially asked him, thinking it was just a formality. I expected an immediate yes. Instead, he told me he needed time to think about it. That alone felt off. And then, the next day, he called back with a no. When I asked him why, his answer absolutely blew my mind. Apparently, Emily had her cat cremated a few weeks ago, and now she wanted to go to Hawaii to scatter the ashes on the beach. A couple of years back, she went there with some friends, and she brought her cat with her. Supposedly, she had really fond memories of that trip, and that beach special to her. And surprise-ish decided the perfect day to do it was exactly 1 month after the cat's death, which just so happened to be the same day as my wedding. Dad didn't just refuse to walk me down the aisle, he told me he wouldn't be at my wedding at all. He said he was really sorry and that he'd try to make it up to me somehow, but he had to go with Emily because this was the first time in weeks she had shown any interest in doing something or even leaving the house. She had specifically asked him to come with her because she needed emotional support. I was furious, but I kept my composure and calmly suggested that maybe one of her friends could go with her instead, or that she could do it the day after my wedding so that Dad could be there. I just wanted at least one parent by my side on one of the most important days of my life. But Dad told me Emily wouldn't budge. He had already suggested those alternatives, and she had shot them down. He wanted to be at my wedding, but the moment he tried offering other dates, Emily accused him of not caring about her feelings. According to her, on my wedding day, I would be surrounded by people who loved me, while she only had Dad. She insisted that she should be the priority because she was going through an incredibly difficult time. And then Dad said he agreed with her. That was it. That was the moment I snapped. I told him she had been his priority her entire life, and I wasn't even surprised that he was ditching me on my wedding day to be with her. Before he could say another word, I hung up and blocked him everywhere. I was devastated. When I told Jake, he completely understood how I felt. I cried for 2 days straight, but then I decided to get even. I wasn't going to just sit there and let Emily and Dad mess with my head. If my sister wanted to play psychological games with me, I was going to hit back in a way that would piss them both off. Instead of crying, I asked my uncle to walk me down the aisle. My uncle Dad's twin brother. They absolutely despise each other. I've known this since I was a kid. Every family gathering, they would try to one-up each other, making things awkward for everyone else. My grandparents always tried to keep the peace, but it was useless. The hatred ran too deep. Eventually, things calmed down a bit, but after Mom passed away, Dad stopped attending any event where he might run into my uncle. Personally, I never had anything against my uncle. I actually kind of understood him after all. I knew exactly what it was like to hate your own sibling, but we were never particularly close. Still, after that call with Dad, I was so furious that I reached out to him and asked if he would walk me down the aisle. He was shocked. He even hesitated at first, saying we weren't close enough for something like that. But I told him straight up I was doing it to get back at Dad for what he did to me. And the second he realized how much it would piss my father off, he didn't even need convincing. He said yes immediately. My uncle actually laughed when I asked him if he wanted to be part of this. Even though they're both in their 50s now, he said he would never pass up a chance to screw over his brother. So, we agreed to make a public post about iTone that my dad was guaranteed to see. That same evening, I wrote a post expressing how grateful I was to my uncle for stepping up to walk me down the aisle. A few hours later, my dad called me. I had unblocked him just for this conversation. The moment he got through, he went straight to how deeply hurt he was that I even considered asking his brother of all people to take his place. He said he would convince Emily to postpone scattering the ashes, and all I had to do was agree to let him walk me down the aisle. Because, to him, nothing could be more humiliating and insulting than watching his twin brother do it while he was still alive and well. I told him he had his chance, and he threw it away for Emily. I just returned the favor. He was devastated. He called me petty and childish. I agreed. Yeah, I was being petty, but that only pissed him off more. By the end of the conversation, he was crying, saying he never expected this from me just because he was trying to support my depressed sister, who was going through something way harder than I was. He told me I had no empathy and that I was being cruel because Emily had lost everything and I couldn't even let her have her father for just one day. And honestly, maybe he had a point. Emily really had lost a lot, and for a moment, I wondered, was I really being too harsh? So, I need your opinion. Should I apologize to my father? Was I wrong to ask my uncle to walk me down the aisle after my dad refused because he had to be with my sister in Hawaii on the day of my wedding? Now, let's pause for a moment. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Update 1. The wedding is in 2 days. And you know what? I've decided to walk down the aisle by myself. No more stress, no more games. Honestly, it feels even more fitting to do it alone because, in the end, I've realized I can only ever truly rely on myself. I talked to my uncle, and since we already got the reaction we wanted from my dad, he's fine with just attending as a guest, as originally planned. He never cared that much about walking me down the aisle anyway, was skeptical about it from the start. I also sent my dad a message. A phone call would have just led to another fight. In the message, I told him he was welcome to come to the wedding, but he didn't need to walk me down the aisle, and if he still chose to go to Hawaii with Emily, that was his decision. But if he did, that would be it. I would cut him out of my life for good, because he's had plenty of chances to prove that I mattered to him too, and every single time, he's let me down. I won't tolerate that kind of disrespect anymore. I just want to get married and be happy on my wedding day. I've spent too much time worrying about what he thinks, about how people would judge my choices, and for what? He never cared about how I felt. If he did, he wouldn't have dropped this bombshell on me just days before my wedding. If he actually cared, he would have apologized. But after I sent that message, he didn't even bother to respond. I talked to Jake about it, and he agrees I made the right call. The wedding is just a couple of days away, and at this point, I don't see any other way forward. Update 2. Hey, guess what? I got married yesterday. I still can't believe it. I'm actually married. It feels so surreal, and right now, I'm beyond happy. I don't even want to think about my dad and Emily, but I promised an update, so here it is this time, with a clear head. Last time, I was just venting. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, my dad didn't come to the wedding. As far as I know, he went to Hawaii with Emily to scatter her dead cat's ashes. Yep, that's what he chose over his own daughter's wedding. I'm not even going to dwell on it because, honestly, some people have already judged me for not taking my sister's depression seriously. Look, I do feel sorry for her. Depression is awful. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And ironically, my worst enemy is Emily. But this isn't about depression. Her decision to go to Hawaii on my wedding day wasn't because she was depressed. It was because she has an obsessive need to be the center of attention and to one-up me at every opportunity. She could have waited a couple of days and done it earlier. But Noshe chose my wedding. I refuse to believe that was just a coincidence. She has always had it out for me, and I can't convince myself this was simply a side effect of her depression. Depression might explain her actions, but it doesn't excuse them. So no, I'm not going to just let her off the hook because she's going through a rough time. As for my dad, that's a whole different story. Honestly, I don't even know what to say about him anymore, except that he let me down again, and this time I'm not forgiving him. It won't be easy going through life knowing I don't have parents who support me, but let's be real, did I ever really have that support? To my dad, there was only ever Emily, and now it's more obvious than ever. I was a fool for thinking that would ever change. He didn't even have the decency to tell me in advance that he wouldn't be coming to my wedding. No, he played it smart. He stayed silent. I sent him a message days before, and he never responded. So up until the last minute, I was left wondering if he would show up or not. I kept checking my phone, and when I finally walked down the aisle and the ceremony ended, I had my answer. That's when he finally texted me. He told me he was in Hawaii with Emily, attending the ash scattering ceremony because, in his words, she needed him more than I did. He said she was emotionally dependent on him and that he was sorry, but he hoped I would understand his decision. Maybe I would have found that message sincere if he hadn't also thrown in a jab about how my petty behavior with my uncle had pushed him away. Apparently, that was another reason he decided not to come. He felt like it was best if we took a break from speaking to each other. I won't deny that my actions were petty, but honestly, the only reason I did it was because I have spent my entire life feeling invisible to him since my mom died. I won't pretend I wasn't being childish, but what else was I supposed to do? I just wanted to matter to him for once. I wanted to know if I was even a priority to him at all. And I guess I got my answer. Maybe I do matter to him, just not enough to show up at my wedding. That message really hurt, especially because it was my wedding day. I wanted to be happy, so I did the only thing I could do. I blocked him and moved on with my night. Besides, he had already made his choice not to come. The text message was just unnecessary confirmation. Of course, guests were curious about why my father and sister weren't there, and I decided to be completely honest. I told them the truth. If it made anyone look bad, that was on them, not me. I had nothing to hide. Most people were shocked. Some even found the whole thing ridiculous. So now, nearly everyone in the family knows that my father skipped my wedding to go to Hawaii and scatter the ashes of Emily's cat. He couldn't make time for one day for me. And in my eyes, that is his greatest failure as a father. But despite everything, I had an amazing time. Nothing can take that away from me. My wedding day will still be the happiest day of my life. Now, I'm starting a new chapter with the person I love the most, and I've made a firm decision. He is my only family now. Update 3. It's been a week since my wedding. In a few days, Jake and I are leaving for our honeymoon. But of course, my dad and Emily just couldn't let me be happy in peace. They decided now was the perfect time to lecture me about how I publicly shamed them by telling the wedding guests the truth. 3 days ago, Emily sent me a message. I haven't blocked Heronly, my dad, but after reading it, I wanted to block her too. It infuriated me that she suddenly felt morally superior to me. For context, the only reason I haven't blocked her is because if something ever happens to my dad, I want to know. Despite everything, if he gets sick, or if there's an accident, I trust that Emily would tell me. And that's the only reason I still allow her to contact me. I know some people will say I should cut them both off completely, but I don't think I can do that. Just because my dad was a terrible parent doesn't mean I have to be a terrible daughter. Maybe that doesn't make sense to some people, but those are my morals, and I intend to stick to them. So please, don't comment on that decision. Now, let's get to the message she sent me. Here it is. Hey, we just got back from Hawaii, and a lot of relatives have already reached out to us. They think we were wrong to choose your wedding day to scatter my cat's ashes. I'm not surprised that you told everyone and made us look bad. Asterisk. But it makes me sad that you keep attacking me, even though you know how hard this has been for me. I really hoped you wouldn't drag Dad and me through the mud because we're your family. You, more than anyone, should understand how painful it is to lose someone you love. I thought you'd show more compassion, but clearly, I was wrong. Dad also noticed that you blocked him, and he's really upset about it. I think you should fix that. Honestly, all I want to say is that you should be more considerate toward us. You can't just live your life thinking only about yourself and expect everyone else to be okay with it. I hope you understand what I'm saying and apologize. Though, if you don't, I won't be surprised. Because if you still can't see me even in a time like this, then expecting anything more from you is just pointless. Asterisk. This message infuriated Menet just because of its condescending tone, but because of the absolute lack of self-awareness. She was playing the victim without even considering what I had been through. It was obvious she had zero empathy for me and still saw herself as the center of the universe. Her attitude made my blood boil, and as for the message itself, I don't even want to talk about it because if I do, I might start insulting her right here and now. It was just so pompous, so full of self-importance, that I honestly wanted to block her on the spot. But after thinking it through, I decided to stay calm and write a measured response. This is what I sent her. Asterisk. Hey, Emily. Yes, I did tell our relatives why you and Dad weren't at my wedding. I chose to be honest because I'm not a liar. Besides, by deciding not to come, you both put yourselves in this position. It's unfair to expect me to hide the truth about your absence, especially given the circumstances, where you both showed complete indifference toward me. Neither of you could even think about me on my wedding day, let alone put me first for once in your lives. So no, I don't see any reason to apologize. If Dad is upset that I blocked him, maybe he should have thought about that sooner instead of regretting it now. I've already made my decision, and I don't want to maintain contact with either of you. So I ask you, please do not call or message me unless it's an emergency. If something serious happens, you can reach out. But if it's not urgent, I don't want to hear from you. I have no interest in keeping in touch with either of you anymore. You have both hurt me deeply over the years, and for once, I actually agree with Dad we should keep our distance for a while. I'm a married woman now, and for the next few years, I just want to enjoy my life with my husband. He is my only family now. I wish you both the best. Goodbye. Asterisk. Before sending it, I showed the message to Jake, and he agreed with every word. Emily replied a few minutes later, saying she respected my decision. She also added that Dad was still really upset about me cutting him off. But that's not my problem anymore. They brought this on themselves. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Emily is secretly relieved that she doesn't have to deal with me anymore. If Dad is really that devastated, well, that's on him. I'm done carrying that burden. Right now, I'm just going to enjoy my honeymoon. Jake and I have been planning this for a long time, and I deserve to be happy. Thank you for your attention. Subscribe, leave a like, and have a great day.